I would love to make the introduction, but I wouldn't do it any justice because there's so much about Akosua Ali that is to talk about. She's an amazing woman. She is the president of the NAACP here in
Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. I've known Akosua for some years, and actually she brought me on board the NAACP when she became the chapter president there. And I want Kennedy to do his introduction. I have him on my phone and he wanted to speak.
I have to tell you that on behalf of the Committee for the Equality, for the Equality of Black People, we decided to institute a series of speakers for the rest of the month. And what we wanted to do was have the most dynamic speakers that we possibly could get. And when that came to mind, the very first person that I thought of was Akosua Ali. I had known Akosua. She and I have been friends. Her husband and I have been friends. I remember when she was the youngest president of the NAACP in the entire United States, or one of them. Yeah. And Akosua, I just want to say to you, I love you. Love your husband. And I want to say to you, please accept my thanks for agreeing and honoring us with that fantastic presentation. Thank you, Akosua.
Welcome to our club, and you got the mic.
Great, that's all yours.
Wonderful, thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the Rotary Club of Washington, D.C., officers, board of directors, President Dent, my mentor, Kenny Barnes, and sister leader, Lisa Cohen, for inviting me to speak today. First, I want to commend the leadership of the Rotary Club of Washington, D.C. for embodying the mantra of transforming lives through service. Your commitment to change the world by promoting peace, fighting disease, providing clean water, supporting education, advocating to save mothers and children has had a transformative impact, and I look forward to the NAACP being a strong partner as we work to advance change together. As the president of the NAACP Washington, D.C. branch, I am particularly honored today to speak to you during Black History Month because the founder of Black History Month, Carter G. Woodson, was a chartering member of our historic Washington, D.C. branch. Carter G. Woodson was born in West Virginia and moved to Washington, D.C., becoming the Dean of Howard University's College of Arts and Sciences. Carter G. Woodson believed that Black people should be proud of our heritage, and we should take this opportunity to highlight the achievements of Black Americans and the amazing work that is being done, but also be real about our challenges, and there's still work to do. Today, I stand on the shoulders of iconic civil rights leaders that never back down and live based on the principles that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The NAACP is leading the fight for equality, ensuring diversity, equity, and inclusion is a priority in all spaces. The NAACP works to disrupt inequality, dismantle racism, and accelerate change in key areas, including climate change, environmental injustice, healthcare, education, maternal health, and the economy. From COVID-19 to income equality, to gun violence to voter suppression, we are fighting an unprecedented fight for our lives. The NAACP DC branch advocates in many spaces. We advocate for homeless prevention and safe emergency shelters for the most vulnerable residents of the District of Columbia. The COVID-19 health pandemic continues to threaten lives of our homeless population as our most vulnerable people are impacted by a lack of access to clean water and sheltered housing. 35% of the nation's homeless population are unsheltered, living in cars, abandoned buildings, parks, or on streets. Our brothers and sisters experiencing homelessness are often forgotten when we prioritize whose lives matter. Our unsheltered homeless are at a heightened risk of contracting COVID-19 due to limited access to running water and safe sheltered housing. The district needs to provide more emergency housing for the homeless, and ultimately, we need to provide real affordable and low-income housing solutions for residents and persons within the District of Columbia. Affordable housing and home ownership is key to building generational wealth. However, within Washington, D.C., affordable housing is no longer a reality, and truly affordable housing for the average working person is not a reality. Systemic racism and economic inequalities continue to depress economic progress and wealth accumulation for African Americans and people of color. Economic empowerment and financial sustainability are key to addressing the systemic inequalities that have disproportionately impacted African Americans for centuries. Wealth and access to resources directly impact access to quality healthcare, education, employment, housing, criminal justice, and legal representation. Racial injustices and systemic inequalities are rooted in a community's ability to acquire, maintain, retain, and transition wealth across generations. Secondly, quality education is the key to our future. Education equity across all 8 wards in the District of Columbia is critical. Every student across the District of Columbia deserves access to great teaching, equitable resources, and a safe learning environment. On Monday, there was a shooting of an 8th grade student in Southeast DC by another teenager. Resource inequities and economic obstacles impact students' access to quality education. To bridge these gaps, the NAACP strives to eliminate education-related racial disparities and advocate to ensure underserved Black children get a real chance at fulfilling education, learning, and future achievement. Today, Blacks are only 43% of the population in the district, but Blacks are 91% of the population in Ward 7 and Ward 8. The average housecom in the District of Columbia, the average household income in DC is $139K. However, the average household income is $64K in Ward 7 and $60,000 in Ward 8, respectively. Racial disparities and income inequalities impact resources and academic support essential to students ascending within quality education. Black students have access, should have access, and their access to quality education is now more important than ever. Environmental and climate injustices are also critical racial justice issues. Within the district, childhood asthma and lead exposure are major issues facing Black and brown communities. Children living in Ward 7 and Ward 8 are 20 times more likely to go to the hospital emergency room for asthma than children living in Ward 3. Mortality rates attributed to air pollution, particles, are more than 4 times higher in Ward 7 than in Ward 2 and Ward 3. We all know the severe health and developmental risk of lead exposure, so it's particularly concerning that 151 children under the age of 6 in DC have elevated blood levels in 2021. So we must urge reform around both childhood asthma and lead exposure issues with regards to lead service lines and ensuring that we advocate for affordable solutions to replace the lead pipes within the district for residents regardless of their income, and continue to fight against toxins being released into our low-income communities that are contributing to asthma and other health disparities. Lastly, we all have a right to public safety, from Black on Black gun violence within our communities to police brutality targeting Black and brown people. Public safety is everyone's right. There have been more than 1,000 instances of police brutality at Black protests since the murder of George Floyd. Yet, on January 6th, our government failed to deploy adequate police or troops to the violent riots led by white supremacists and extremists at the U.S. Capitol, resulting in the death of a police officer. Systemic inequalities within our criminal justice system, unjustly targeting Black people, but allowing grace in other spaces, must be addressed through laws and regulations. The NAACP is fighting for equity, diversity, and racial inclusion in all spaces, and access to quality healthcare is a civil rights issue. Climate change is a civil rights issue. Environmental justice is a civil rights issue. Education is a civil rights issue, and being able to live in a safe community free of gun violence where our children can grow and breathe clean air is a civil rights issue. This is our fight, and today is the day to be intentional about saving lives and making real change in our communities. Those who have to ensure that we make the intentional effort to give back to those who have not. So it is my honor to speak to you all today, and on behalf of the NAACP Washington, DC branch, and on behalf of the NAACP National Board of Directors, and a movement that continues to transform and fight for equity and justice in all spaces across this country, particularly in the District of Columbia. I thank you all for your time. I thank you for allowing me to bring greetings and just share a little bit of information with you all about how we can work collectively together to address change that will impact future generations to come. So thank you all again for your time, and I wish you peace and power. I'll take any questions. Thank you.
A question that rose during your talk was, what can we do? Say those of us that don't identify as Black, but are certainly want to further and help. What can we do? What are two things that we can concretely do in our daily lives?
Well, one of them that all communities can do, all individuals, everyone who is conscious and wants to make a difference can be actively engaged within our civic political process as voting citizens, as residents within the District of Columbia, ensuring that our voices are heard in several critical spaces. So some of the key issues that I lifted up around education equity, ensuring that even if you live in Ward 3 or Ward 4 or don't live in the district at all, but you have an invested interest in ensuring that children have access to quality education, and more importantly, that children have access to safe passage. One of the major issues that we're facing in the district right now, particularly in Ward 7 and Ward 8, is children, when they are leaving school, being able to get home safely. So there's the safe passage issue that we have within DCPS. Ensuring that affordable housing is a reality as well. Again, those of us who have, ensuring that we can lend our voice from a place of power and privilege in some cases to be able to fight for those who do not have, right? So also advocating members of the council and our elected officials to ensure that we offer real affordable housing solutions. When we look at affordable housing policies within the District of Columbia, what they qualify as affordable housing can often be a percentage of what is truly low income or affordable housing. And we're not talking about creating projects within high-rise condos, right? We're not talking about necessarily providing more Section 8 vouchers within high-quality housing facilities. We're talking about real diversity and equity in terms of income within housing and making it affordable for the average working person to be able to afford purchasing a home. So specifically, many police officers, teachers that work within the District of Columbia cannot afford to purchase a home in the District of Columbia. That is an inequity issue. It's an income inequity issue, and it's a racial justice. It's a social justice issue more than a racial justice issue, because it may disproportionately impact Black people, but it's not a Black people issue, right? It is a those without issue. And income inequality is an issue that we want to lift up and advocate for people of all races, even if it does disproportionately impact African Americans, really ensuring equity in all spaces. So my urge to all of you would be to use your voices, use your position, use your relationships with your members of the council, with the mayor, or just being a registered voter within the District of Columbia to ensure that you are willing to push the needle and advocate for more resources for those who need it. So the biggest urge would be to be an active part of our democratic process, to ensure your voices are heard, ensure that you are urging the council to pass legislation reforms, and being engaged even in the budget season, which is happening right now. There are performance oversight hearings that are happening before the council. So if we want to know what is happening and where those gaps are, this is our time to lift those voices as individuals. But the offer is always on the table to be a partner and to work in collaboration with the NAACP as we look to legislate and advocate legislative changes to these policies. Sometimes that can be issuing a joint letter. It can be calling for a public hearing. And if we combine our voices, then it definitely elevates our strength and our impact together.
So this is a perfect question by Bill Day that will dovetail with what you just said. You just spoke about the legislative process. He has a question about the judicial process and the action, or maybe lack of action, by the Supreme Court earlier this week. So Bill, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for being here. When I think about the number of people who died to try to ensure the vote for everyone, I am in virtual despair when I see Alabama winning Voting Rights Act cases in the Supreme Court. And when I think about Washington, D.C., which has a far greater population than dozens of states that are enfranchised, that have senators and a congressman and a voice, that the people in the district do not have that critical right to vote. And I don't know, what do we do? It just breaks my heart.
Absolutely. Well, you're definitely speaking truth to power. We know that the statehood continues to be a real fight for residents of the district. The fact that we pay more taxes per capita than many other states across the nation, and we do not have voting representation within Congress, it's asinine, right? I mean, it is really abominable for the residents of the district. It's the ultimate disenfranchisement of residents of the District of Columbia when we speak about the right to vote, but we are all, tax-paying citizens. But on a second piece, the attack of voting rights, the movement of voting rights suppression that is taking place across the country is historic and should have all of us woke to the need for us to engage and for us to really be upset. The fact that in 2021, 2022, we're having a conversation about voting rights that many of our ancestors, regardless of our race, right? Like with the civil rights movement, we definitely had our African-American ancestors that, bled, sweat, and cried for the right to vote. But let's not remember our ancestors were not alone, right? There were many people of all shades and hues, races that stood in solidarity with the need for people of all races to have the right to vote. So this is something that should upset all of us today, as we understand that these voter suppression laws that are sweeping across this nation are historic, and they should have all of us upset. But again, as we are inundated with the trauma of all of these sweeping changes that are happening and injustices and all of these inequities that are happening across the country, it's also important that we try to focus on how can we make a difference, but how can we also continue to move out of this pandemic, which is significantly having an unprecedented traumatic effect on the people of this country from a mental health aspect, but we're also trying to balance the inequities and injustice as well. So I'm with you. It is frustrating. We have work to do, and we're going to take it one step at a time together.
Our own President Bill has a question. I think he already is very actively engaged in the legislative process because he wants to know what else he can do. Go ahead, Bill.
Yes, thank you, Salvador. Yeah, another bill here. Yes, my first job was on Capitol Hill, and my question is: besides serving as a voice for the African American community before Congress and state houses across the country, what types of local projects does the NAACP actively promote or support, say at a community level? And I ask this because we Rotarians are, quote, people of action, and we look to engage in the community through projects.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for asking. So most immediately, I would say actually this week, one of the education and equity issues that we lifted up was with regards to students within the District of Columbia having access to quality education. So one of the initiatives that we have taken on as the NAACP is closing the gap for Black excellence. It is a program that we are actually launching. It will go on between February and March of this year, where we are actually providing free virtual coaching, interview coaching to particularly applicants who are applying to some of the DCPS premier magnet schools, one of them being School Without Walls Senior High School. Some of you may be familiar with. They have an application process and an interview process, very competitive for students to get in. And we received some disturbing application data at a high level. Over 150 applications were received in 2021 for School Without Walls from Ward 7 and Ward 8, and less than 20 students were actually admitted. Out of 500 applications, 150 students are admitted annually, but specifically from Ward 7 and Ward 8, less than 20 out of 150 students that were admitted into last year's academic class were from Ward 7 and Ward 8. And that is an education inequity issue that we are launching this program to address. So specifically, we anticipate having over 500 applications being received this year, and we are providing free virtual online coaching for interview preparation for students, particularly from underserved communities. So we are really looking to increase the acceptance rate of students from Ward 7 and Ward 8 east of the river into DCPS premier magnet schools that we know offer advanced learning opportunities by at least 200%. So between February 11th, which is when we are commencing our first session of virtual interview coaching, all the way through March, which is when the School Without Wall interviews will conclude. We're going to be offering free virtual interview coaching to help students to be more comfortable in articulating their vision, their skill sets, their abilities, and their interest in attending schools such as School Without Walls. This is a pilot program. This is our first year doing this program. We're starting with School Without Walls, but our goal is to expand it to other schools. So this is an immediate program that we are actually implementing right now, and we are looking to mobilize anywhere between 50 and 100 coaches to do one-on-one coaching with students in preparation for their interviews. Why interviews? Because the school determined that in the application process, many of these students from Ward 7 and Ward 8 had strong applications. Their academics were strong, but their interview performance is where they were lacking and where their ratings suffered, and it impacted their acceptance into those schools. So we've identified that that is one of those gaps, and that's where we are specifically implementing an initiative as we speak to address that. And we want to have a successful outcome in achieving more diversity within the 2020 admissions class at School Without Walls. That's one of our education initiatives.
That's fantastic. And we Rotarians work a lot in the education arena, and perhaps in the future and work with you in that area.
Yeah.
So, all right.
I also wanted to say something to Akosua.
Please.
It is so good to see you, Akosua. Yeah, I remember when you were just pretty much coming on to the NAACP as this very, very young person, and just killing it, and as you still are right now. You speak of the inequities here in this city and throughout the country, and we have brought to our club this same issue that we're trying to help within our club. And I would love to connect with you directly to get some maybe learning material from you on how we can educate our Rotarians just as members to be able to culturally engage and communicate with people across the board intelligently and without fear. Yeah, the housing disparities in this country and in this city, it doesn't make any sense. And I remember when they hit ground zero, which was Ward 1 here in DC, and there should not be even there shouldn't even be a term, affordable housing. I mean, what does that mean? It shouldn't even be a word, you know, because everybody should be able to live somewhere, and it should be nice and safe. But yes, thanks for bringing the message. I'm looking forward to working with you, and I'd like to interview some of those kids, help them with their interviews too.
I would love that. Absolutely. Thank you. We would love to have you.
So Lisa, I just want to take the opportunity to recognize you as the founder of our committee, Rotarians for Equity for Black People. And also want to recognize Kenny for being my co-chair. We have a peace working group or peace work group, which includes a local cohort that's focusing on the issues of violence in our communities, including gun violence. And we're just getting started, but you could be a great resource for us in that working group. So we look forward to having a close working relationship with you. You already have it through Kenny, who's the co-chair.
All right, we have one more question and we only have a couple minutes left, so that would be perfect. And it goes right with the train of thought here, as President was just saying, and if you didn't get the idea, we definitely are people of action and want to help. How can we help? The question from Musa is he's got a noisy background, so he wanted me to post it for him. And he wants to know other specific projects that the NAACP is doing in either Ward 7 or 8.
Other work that we've done in other spaces. So let me first say that the NAACP DC branch has over 24 standing committees. That includes economic empowerment, education, climate and environmental justice, health, mental and behavioral health, women and infants, which is our WIN committee, which works on maternal health issues, child developmental issues, and particularly supporting women leaders, veterans affairs, political action, housing, labor, and several other areas that I have not mentioned. So there are many programmatic areas that we work on. And with under each of those program areas, our committee structure is monitoring what are key issues that are impacting communities of color disproportionately under those areas, what legislation is in place, what is happening within the budget to address those issues. So we work very constantly. It is a growing requirement as things develop and as things move through the council in all of those different program areas. So the education project is something ongoing. Something we have done in the past is around a health fitness challenge, health and wellness. We have launched a 6-month and a 12-month previously health fitness challenge where we've particularly targeted really providing free personal training, nutrition coaching to people of color within Ward 7 and Ward 8. Not only, but really ensuring that we provide opportunities to individuals, and it has been a free program. Another area is legal redress, and I would offer this in general. So the NAACP DC branch has processed over 614 complaints of discrimination that have occurred within the District of Columbia over my 11 years as president. I became president of the NAACP DC branch in 2010. And since that time, we have processed over 614 complaints of discrimination. That includes policing misconduct, housing, economic, consumer issues, education issues, any complaints that have come to us either via email, electronically, or via phone call. And what we are looking to do a better job at is really engaging with pro bono legal representation to ensure that individuals that are in need or are facing a traumatic situation are able to obtain pro bono legal support, because the NAACP does not provide legal advice or legal representation. We are an advocacy arm, but we do want to bring resources to connected to those people that are in need. So that is another area that if anyone is, if you're with a law firm particularly that has a pro bono arm, whether it's in housing or consumer or policing or a criminal, then there's definitely room for us to be able to partner there. Or again, if you have experience just in the legislative space and you know that there are some areas that we can work in collaboration for us to be able to do that and be intentional around some of these key programmatic or racial justice areas. So there's a lot of opportunity there, but those are some of the most immediate ones. So the education piece, I'll drop the link in the chat. We do a lot around health right now, particularly COVID testing, encouraging people to get tested beyond getting vaccinated as well. And then the third piece being around legal redress, or again, just pro bono or free legal services that are available for underserved or marginalized communities that are in need or in trauma. If we can be a connector to help our communities that we are aware of that have these issues become connected to those resources, we want to be able to do that as well.
Akosua, why don't you let everybody know if they wish to join the NAACP? And again, thank you so very much. And also extend that, as I did to you when we talked, a membership for you to join the Rotary Club. And thanks, Akosua.
Yes.
Thank you, Kenny. Yes, I will take those two for action. I will drop our website in the chat if anyone is interested in becoming a member of the NAACP. Life membership for the NAACP starts at $750 or 10 payments of $75. And we are actually in the middle of doing a silver life membership campaign where our first 100 new life members of the NAACP will be announcing and launching as a part of our campaign press release and on our website. So we want to make a very public and visible announcement of our new life members. I will drop that link in the chat, and then also I will drop the link in the chat, and everyone can join regardless of race, regardless of sexual orientation, gender, affiliation, anything. We welcome you all as long as you are conscious and making a difference around these areas.
So, Akosua, it's been wonderful to have you as our speaker today. You are an amazing leader of an amazing organization that has such an incredible history. So we have a tradition of honoring our speakers with the planting of a tree that we do in partnership with the National Park Service. Some of the trees go down, are planted on the tidal basin, and others are helping retree our downtown parks here in Washington, D.C. So you will be invited to our next tree planting ceremony. We hope to do in the spring with the National Park Service, and we'll actually be able to provide you with coordinates of your tree. Okay. Anyway, that's our small contribution to climate change and just making Washington, D.C. a greener city. So thanks for being a part of that. It's been wonderful having you today as our speaker.
Thank you.
And with that, I will officially adjourn the meeting. It's